All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar held by UWC Diligent College. Today, we have three UWC Diligent alumni here to give some university and career advice, tell us a bit about their own particular journeys, and sharing just hopefully some good nuggets of wisdom for you all. So today we are joined by Victoria, Manas, and Edita. So we'll kind of go one by one. I'll give each about 5 minutes to tell us a bit about their stories, and then we will ask a few questions. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat or Q&A box. And then we will be sure to ask our panelists here today. So first, we will begin with Victoria. She's from Denmark, and she graduated from UWC Diligent in 2016. Victoria, I'll give it to you. Can you just tell us a bit about your own university and career trajectory so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be at a university and career panel because I don't have a career. No, my name is Victoria, and I graduated from UWC in 2016. So we were your founding fathers in a way. And I think about UWC daily. So thanks for inviting me to engage a little bit with students that are currently studying. So my background, as you said, Harvey, is that I come from Denmark originally. And then I was at UWC, and it was an incredible experience. After that, I took a gap year. So in Denmark, that's actually something that almost everyone does. So in my gap year, I worked for half a year, mostly in a cafe, and then I traveled for half a year, seeing friends from UWC, but also doing an internship in India. And then after that, I attended a bachelor's degree at UCL in London, where I was studying philosophy. And interestingly, I actually changed my degree after a year to study social policy at a university down the road called LSE. And I think if there's one thing I learned from that, it is that, like, even though it can seem like a big sort of decision to change your degree, it can be incredibly helpful. And like now in retrospect, I don't consider it that I like dropped philosophy to do something else. I consider that year was still very much part of my bachelor. It's just that I wanted to study social policy and I wanted to get into the social sciences a bit more. And I think another thing that I learned is that at UWC, I was taking philosophy, theater, and English literature as my higher level subjects. And so it didn't enter my mind that I could actually apply for, I loved philosophy very much, but it didn't enter my mind that I could apply for a social and public policy degree at a social science institution like LSE, because I hadn't taken any subjects in that. But I kind of learned that you can do that. So if there's something that you're curious about, just go for it. And so I think I kind of kept myself back when I first applied for university. Since then, I am now taking a master's degree at Oxford University in education, because I love education, and that passion definitely comes from UWC. Specifically, I'm looking at the role of technology in education and how that's going to shape the future of education. And next year, I'm joining a consultancy firm in London. So that's my background.
All right, thank you so much, Victoria. So I'll ask you just a few questions about your particular path. So you only took one gap year. I know usually Danish students take not just one, but several. But I'm curious to know why the UK. So all the kind of various options you had, including studying in Denmark. Why did you choose the path to study at a British university?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in Denmark, if you go back to the Danish higher education system, you need to read up on Danish and history in my case. So you need to take I think it's 6 months to read those subjects. And I think I was kind of stubborn. So I kind of felt like I worked so hard for the IB, and then my credentials weren't recognized in Denmark. So I think part of it was kind of stubbornness. Like, well, if you don't think that my high school diploma is good enough, then I'm gonna go to the UK and then I'm gonna be brain drained, kind of in that sense. But I think that the deeper point is that I'm privileged enough to be able to take on a financial loan to attend London. A lot of my friends were moving to British universities. And I had already studied in the US, so I was kind of interested in doing England, also because it's closer to Denmark, to my family in Denmark. So I think the hard truth is that for me, it was a function of privilege and the ability to coming from a privileged family and yeah.
Okay. So then you transferred from, was it UCL to LSE? What was that process like? Was it an easy one? And in starting that new course at LSE, did you have to start kind of from the first year? Did you have any, I don't know, any courses that, or, modules that transferred?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was difficult. Even just attending university was difficult coming from UWC, because UWC, in my experience, was so special in terms of the relationships that you develop and the friendships and your relationship to your teachers and these things. So I thought entering higher education was difficult, because for me, it was difficult in the beginning to kind of find friends. But everyone is very nice, but it's just difficult to develop like the sort of like community or be part of a community that you were at UWC. Changing from UCL to LSE was not difficult academically. So I think you just have to trust that you can, do any subject so long as you find it interesting and you just put in the work, even though I didn't have a background in social sciences. But what I did at LSE was that I became very involved with the students' union. Specifically, I was leading fundraising activities at the university. And that for me was a way to kind of very quickly become integrated into LSE as an institution, and to also just feel that I was kind of driving some UWC values outside of my degree. So I kind of found a nice balance with that.
So I'm also kind of curious about the actual kind of nuts and bolts of that transfer process. So do you kind of reapply as a first year student for LSE? Like how did you go about that process?
Yeah, in terms of changing from UCL to LSE,
Yes.
I think you could probably, I guess there's another thing I've learned, it is that there are rules, but you can apply for a lot of things around rules. So I think if you had done like philosophy and politics and economics at UCL and you wanted to change that to LSE for some reason, then I think you might be able to enter the second year of an LSE degree. Now I had done philosophy, so I actually couldn't do that. But even within my degree at LSE, if there was something a subject that I wanted to take that wasn't within the rules of my degree, I found that it was really helpful to just kind of ask my professor, ask my supervisor, would I be able to take this module in the management department or the economics department? And as long as you're and not being pushy, don't be pushy, but as long as you're kind of trying, often I've found it just kind of helps to just kind of tailor your degree to what you want to do and just try new things.
Okay, thank you. And then how did you decide on education as your kind of path for the master's program? And then how did you decide on kind of Oxford as the next path?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I think since attending UWC, I've just been in complete awe about how much your education can shape who you are, not just in terms of who you are, but also just a sense of purpose. Or I'm so grateful every day for UWC, and just having that as an example for what education and community can mean or be like to be part of. So I've been fascinated by that, and so I always knew that I was kind of interested in education, and that's also why I changed from philosophy. I really didn't want to do the philosophy of education, but then I changed to social policy because I was interested in the policies around education and comparative policies to look at the education system in the US versus Denmark versus the UK versus international education. And so for me, I was seeing a technology shaping education a lot, especially after COVID, like the use of technology in education, and now the metaverse launched by Meta or whatever. It's just shaping education as we know it, and so I'm interested in that kind of I'm interested in that space, how technology is going to shape one of the most holy things we have, which is the education, the way in which like the students come together in spaces of community. So Oxford had launched a new course called Education, Social and Digital Change. And so for me, that felt like something that I wanted to be part of. So I'm part of the first year of that master's at Oxford.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Such an interesting journey that you've taken. Thank you, Victoria. Okay, now we're going to move on to Manas, who graduated in 2020. Very, interesting year. Manas, can you please share about your journey from UWC to your current institution?
Yeah. So my name is Manas. I'm from India. I grew up in Pune, which is where UWC Mahindra is. And so I attended Dilijan from 2018 to 2020. And so around March is when sort of COVID hit us and all of us left and we were all sort of evacuated. And so I ended up going back home. And by this time I had already applied to college, all of them in the US. And I was sort of waiting on an answer from them. I was sort of trying to figure out where I was going to go the next year. And so I got into quite a few really good schools that I was happy with, but the sort of way that school was going to happen the next year was still uncertain. And then at some point when Harvard, who I had committed to go to for the next year, announced that they were going to go fully online for that academic year, I decided to defer my enrollment and just take a gap year instead so that I could go the next year. And so from March to September of 2020, I was just home in India with, in the midst of the pandemic. And I found a lot of things to sort of occupy my time with during this first part of the gap year. So I worked on a really fun language learning startup that I built with other UWC people. And it was a great way to sort of kill my time, meet other UWC folk, and just do something that I really like doing, which is learning and teaching languages. And then in the second sort of half of my gap year, I got a job working at EMIS, which is a school that's very similar to UWC, but in Tel Aviv. So it's a school that has 20% Palestinians, 20% Israelis, and 60% international students, and sort of very similar setup as UWC. And so I worked in the administration there, which was a really, really fun thing to do. So everything from admissions to financial aid to marketing to just everything that you can do in a school apart from teach and learn. And so that was a really fun thing for me to do. I also got to travel a lot in that gap year. And then I went back home to India for the summer. And then since August of 2021, I've been at Harvard. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm only a first year, so I don't really have a clear sort of trajectory of what I'll be majoring in. But from what I imagine, I think it'll be something sort of along the intersection of politics and economics, but with some sort of quantitative element to it. I think I really like data science and like the idea of sort of using data to make like good decisions about economics and politics. So I think that's what I want to do. But yeah, that's me.
All right, thank you, Mana. So I have a few questions. How was that transition from your gap year to starting university?
Well, maybe I can talk a bit about also my transition from UWC to that gap year. I think because my UWC experience was cut short, I was still sort of in denial of having been robbed of a UWC experience in its entirety. And so a part of me with that gap year was me trying to sort of cling on to the idea of what being in a community like UWC could be like. And I think my gap year really gave me that. It also gave me a lot of time to sort of figure out what I wanted to do, what I wanted to study. In my free time in that gap year, I also took a lot of sort of free online courses to see what it would be like to study different things in college. And so it's sort of like a nice little process of elimination. Philosophy, love that, it's fun, but probably couldn't study it. Anthropology, love that, could be fun, but probably not. So yeah, that was really nice. And then my transition into college was also nice. I realized that there really isn't many communities out there like UWC. And it's very sad, but I guess, sort of bringing what I learned at UWC and what I got from it and taking it to whatever institution I go to is like a good way to, go about life. Yeah.
Okay. How has it been kind of academically, that transition from, I guess, UWC, the IB to university kind of coursework? In what ways do you think the IB and UWC diligence, in particular, prepare you for, the academics?
So I think UWC prepares you a lot for college, and on the one hand, there's sort of academics, there's not many other high schoolers that come into college knowing how to do citations, for instance, or knowing how to, write research papers. And so I think there's a huge sort of foundational basis to academic work that the IB gave me. I also took very STEM heavy classes in the IB. So I took physics, chemistry, biology, HL, I took math. And at Harvard, I don't study any of those things. But the fact that I do have sort of the IB foundation to all of the STEM subjects really makes me feel good about, now doing just what I want to do and not what I think I need to know. And then I think UWC also helped me a lot in ways that aren't academic. So a lot of students coming into college, it's their first time being away from home. It's their first time sort of doing their laundry. It's their first time being an adult out in the world. But UWC kind of gives you 2 years of already having done that. It already teaches you how to make friends in a place where you can really choose to make friends. And so, yeah, I think I could talk about this for so long, the ways in which UWC has sort of given me the tools to have an amazing university experience.
Out of kind of sheer curiosity, it's a two-part question. What courses are you taking now? And then second question is, what extracurricular activities are you pursuing now?
So last semester I took some really fun courses. I took courses on microeconomics. I took one course on comparative politics, one on sort of climate change science, and basically all you need to know from like a science perspective about climate change, and then a class about animals in politics, which I guess was just like the philosophical bases of veganism. It was like a mandatory expository writing course, but it was still fun. And then this semester I'm taking 5 courses. So I'm taking 2 economics classes, one which is macro and then one which is slightly like more advanced micro. I'm also taking a class on data science. So it sort of teaches you, it's a class in the politics department. So it teaches you how to use data to, figure out whether there's racial discrimination in the workplace, or if there's, if ethnic ties play into elections in like African countries. And so it's a really good course to, see what data can really do in the social sciences. And then I'm taking one course on race in the Americas and caste in South Asia. And then another one on the sort of politics of the Middle East, and it's focused on the Arab Spring and things like that.
What's been your favorite course so far?
What's been my favorite course? I think my comparative politics course was really fun last semester. It sort of gave me like a really good grounding in political science and just like the way that I think about the social sciences. And then the extracurriculars that I'm doing are, I realized that I really missed sort of being in the outdoors, and because I did a lot of that in Dilijan. And so much of my extracurricular life is sort of the outing club, the mountaineering club, the rock climbing club, and just sort of ways that I can get outdoors and do things that are less with my brain and more with my body. But then apart from that, I'm also in a consulting club. So it's an environmental consulting club. And we sort of work with clients and, consult them on environmental and sustainability issues. I'm also involved with the International Students Association here at Harvard, and also the Student Labor Action Movement, which is a bit like what Victoria was talking about. It's basically the grad students union for collective bargaining for them.
Mm.
But yeah, these are sort of the big things that I do. There's also other small things that keep happening, but yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Manas. We'll come back to you with more questions. Okay, now we're gonna move on to Edita. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, you can correct me. She graduated from UWC Dilijan in 2016. Please share with us, about your story, your path from UWC to where you are now.
Great. Firstly, Manas, we live quite close to each other, so I hope we meet one day. I live in Medford, so yes. So yeah, I am also one of the founding fathers, as Victoria mentioned, of UWC Dilijan. And I graduated in 2016, and I did not take a gap year. So I went straight to do my undergrad in US. I went to Earlham College in Indiana, and I studied international relations and economics, which was a lot of fun. And I actually did not change my major. So I went there knowing that I want to study that. And I just happened to pursue what I wanted initially. And afterwards, I graduated in 2020 from Earlham. So not a good year to graduate from anything really. And but I was very, very lucky to be able to secure a full-time position after graduation. And I was working in DC. I was working for a development organization called Center for International Private Enterprise. And I was actually working on programming in South Caucasus and Central Asia and a bit of Eastern Europe. So that was a lot of fun. And I worked on mainly really at the intersection of what I studied, which was international relations and economic development. And that made me know that I want to pursue Masters in International Relations afterwards. And I'm currently a first-year graduate student at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. And I am studying international economics and environmental/energy policy. They don't have the name of the concentration figured out yet, but that's what I study. Yeah, I am doing a lot of other things at Fletcher. Interestingly enough, there was never an Armenia club at the graduate level. So we have founded an Armenia club here. I'm also doing a consulting project like Manas. I'm working on environmental consulting too. And yeah, I'm also involved with the Energy Club at the Fletcher School, with Tufts undergraduate student council. I'm working with them on different projects. So I'm doing a lot of things in general. So if you have any like specific questions that can kind of shape the conversation, it'll be great.
Yeah, sure. I have a few questions. How can you tell me a bit about what opportunities you kind of took advantage of at Earlham that kind of helped you to I guess put you on this trajectory to for Tufts, for the work and the career that you're kind of on the verge of pursuing now?
Yeah. Let me think. Firstly, I would say that Earlham in general was amazing because professors really took care of you, even though you were an adult already. They really made sure that it was very similar in a way to UWC. It's a small community, and professors know you very well. You know your professors very well. So as long as you are in constant communication with them, you talk to them about your career choices, what you want to do. They're always there to support you, both in terms of recommendations, in terms of giving you career advice. And I was also working with the Career Center as a peer career coach, though I don't think I was very well suited for that position, but I was, while working as a peer career coach, I was learning some techniques for myself of how to do job search, like reach out to people. But I think what really helped me in terms of my full-time position afterwards was my focus. So I was very focused on South Caucasus in terms of my research, and I was also taking the kind of courses that gave me that some of the quantitative background I needed. I was taking some programming classes, I was taking some statistics classes, and then I also had an understanding of how international order is. So that kind of, it was a very niche position that I fitted, and it was a good fit for me. So I think I took advantage really of building those relations with my professors and them helping me navigate my career afterwards, directing me to the right positions and so forth. And also just taking the classes that I was interested in. And liberal arts lets you really pick and choose. You don't have to be too focused from your first year. So yeah, I had that freedom to experiment a bit as well in terms of classes.
How did UWC slash the IB, but more specifically UWC Dilijan, how did it prepare you for life at Earlham?
So IB was really one of the hardest things I've done till this day.
To this day, wow.
Yes, because when I came to UWC, my English was fine, but it wasn't great. So I faced a lot of language barrier was, and so many of my peers did as well. So studying IB, and I was doing humanities and social sciences as my high level subjects. Then going to Earlham and working on their like intro to comparative politics essays or anything, it was a breeze because I already knew how to do these things from my history class or my English classes. So it was definitely I was academically prepared when I entered Earlham. And even though I learned a lot, UWC did set that ground for me in terms of knowing how to do research, knowing how to write essays and how to write essays in a short period of time. So academically, yeah, IB is rigorous, but I think it's worth it. So yeah, that definitely, and even honestly, maybe it's because I am like accumulating knowledge and it's things becoming easier for me even at the Fletcher School. But I do think like the amount of time and effort I used to put into understanding how to write essays and how to write in English well really started at UWC for me and really set that.
Okay, great. Can you tell me about the kind of the application process and just that general process of moving from Earlham, it's kind of like small, really kind of tight-knit community to I mean, an amazing kind of graduate program. I mean, Tufts is known for its graduate program, the Fletcher School. So can you just tell us kind of about that application process, or also that process of deciding on going to graduate school first of all, and then choosing what schools to apply to, yeah, and so on.
Yeah, for sure. So I was actually, when I was working, I was debating between a PhD program, whether I should do a PhD or whether I should do a master's degree. And after just like really honest conversations with myself, I realized I'm not ready to study for 6 years more. So I just wanted to do a master's degree, and I knew about Fletcher since I was doing international relations. Fletcher was like a dream program from a very long time since my undergraduate degree, and a lot of alumni from Fletcher were working at the organization that I was working. So I started having conversations with them, and I started having conversations with people in all these like international relations school in DC, Boston area, and through my work and through my network. And yeah, I just the application process. So I was applying in 2020, and during that time, firstly, there were like good things and bad things about that year. Good things was that GRE and other graduate tests were not like they were waived, which was amazing because I did not take any of those. And but the bad thing was there were a lot of deferrals. So people, like the entering class was smaller because they had to accommodate for that. So it was a fairly straightforward process. I just reached out to my recommendations, which were from Erlem, and all of them were very supportive and wrote me good recommendations since I'm here. And I just work on my personal statement, additional essays that the Fletcher School wanted. And Fletcher did not have an interview process. So once I got, I just got my acceptance. But it was fairly straightforward, very similar to how I applied to undergraduate to study at Erlem.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you so much. This was really, really, useful, very helpful. So now I guess we're gonna move on to our general Q&A section. I have one question here that came in specifically for Victoria. So you mentioned that you did some charity activities and fundraising. One of our people kind of participating today, they're interested in learning more about what you did. So can you share some more about the work that you did, the charity work and fundraising work that you did?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is probably the case for any university, but they kind of have a charity and fundraising division that is streamlining fundraising activities that are going on at a given university. And the idea is often that like each society is doing some fundraising, but also there's kind of some core fundraising undertaking by an arm of the union. And so that's what I was doing. So I was kind of the president of that fundraising arm. I think it's interesting because at university, especially maybe, well, I think you'll find that, like a lot of students when you come to university want to do like consulting society or would like to do like Model United Nations or want to do like business and investment group. But actually I've found that like, I guess I never did those societies, so I can't really speak to it. But I've found that if you find kind of a niche on your university that you find really fun or interesting, like you learn so much in that role because you can often take on like a leadership role and like fundraising, even though it's the groundwork of what charities are doing, it's not necessarily viewed as like one of the most like prestigious things to do or something, but it requires a lot. Like it requires the ability to mobilize people around the cause. It requires a lot of organizational skills. It requires an ability to build a brand around fundraising in the university. So like for me, doing fundraising at a university was really, really fun, and I grew so much. And I consider kind of like my experience at university, part of it was my degree, but part of it was also all the personal development that I underwent from leading the fundraising arm of the union. So it wasn't really that I was doing charity work necessarily per se. It was more that I was managing fundraising. So a specific example is that at LSE we organized Freshers Week for all incoming students at LSE, and then the profits go to charity. And that's really fun because then like what I did specifically is that I negotiated with the biggest clubs in London about our students coming for an evening at their event. And it's kind of, it ends up being this like massive project, and it's just really fun to just dive into. And it's really fun because when I think back on it, I'm like, I can't believe that we did that. That is so overwhelming, but it's kind of fun when you just start like doing it, and then you just have to like push through with it. But yeah. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I think it's such a powerful point. The value of, I think, students think of, I must do an internship and that internship is what's going to give me the skills I need. But there's so much value in the extracurricular activities that you do and the leadership and the management that's involved in that. You really do gain lots of skills that are transferable to, your ultimate career. Thank you for sharing that, Victoria. So I have a question here for Manas, the editor. So one viewer has mentioned that it seems that you're both focused on the environment. Is there a specific aspect of the environment or environmental work that you're really passionate about? So that's for both of you.
Sure, I can start. I am right now working more on ESG compliance, which is basically environmental, social, and governance compliance among the private sector. It's a relatively new term, a new area of work, but I find it very interesting because when I was doing when I was working in DC, I was focused on the social and governance pillars. When in South Caucasus, environment hasn't become a big thing, unfortunately, in Armenia, Georgia, or other neighboring countries. But I was mostly focused on the social and governance aspect. So when I came to Fletcher, they have a very good climate program here. And I was picking my concentrations. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a look into the environmental policy aspect of things. And I'm very interested in ESG compliance, and my thesis is going to be focused on renewable energy procurement in Armenia. And I'm trying to understand how private sector can enter that market, because right now it's mostly done through government. So I'm interested in on that ESG compliance and also renewable energy procurement.
Can you share what exactly is ESG compliance?
So ESG compliance is in a way a framework. It's a regulatory framework, but it hasn't become legally binding yet in a lot of very few countries have mandatory disclosure policies of your environmental data, or your how you go about your corporate governance, how you go about your social governance. It's a private sector related framework mainly. So basically, on the environmental aspect of things, we would look at how much we would look at that industry's kind of performance across different sustainability issues. For example, greenhouse emissions, waste management, recycling, so forth. So basically, we want to understand whether they're doing everything they can not to harm the environment, or they are not, and how does that rank them compared to other peer industries.
Okay. So, and the focus is on kind of, the private sector in the South Caucasus.
Right now I'm working on a project in India. Actually, Manas, I'm working with Tata Auto Camps. So, but my thesis is focused on South Caucasus. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Manas?
Yeah, so the climate change science class that I took last semester, I think I just took because I think it's a class that everyone should take. Like, there was sort of information in there about the science of climate change that is technically very easily and widely available on the internet, but that most people probably wouldn't know about or learn about. But yeah, I think the reason that I took that class is because I do want to work in public policy and sort of economic, I guess, poverty alleviation and things like that. But I think it would be useful for me to also have like a framework of ethics that's shaped around the environment while I'm doing this. So I guess that was my big reasoning for taking that environmental class. And then my environmental consulting group is actually really fun because we get to work with real life clients, real life private sector clients, like Idita said, and in essence, help them be more sustainable. And while sometimes this can take the form of helping them do the minimum possible to meet their ESG ratings, in some cases I think we really sort of get to make an impact and get them to, because there's not a lot of people inside of these companies that have the environment as their number one priority. And so if it makes sense for them to sort of subcontract their sustainability goals to a club like us, it's really fun for us, really a good learning opportunity for us, and it's a good way to have impact.
Thank you. We have another question for you, Manas. Someone has asked about the language activities that you've done. The exact language is language stuff. Did you like it? And was it helpful to you?
Yeah, so I really like languages personally. They're like this crazy big hobby of mine. I thought at some point in my life that I would have liked to study linguistics, but then I figured that it probably wasn't for me. But yeah, the language stuff that I've done is I've learned languages at like different points in my life. So when I was in Armenia, when I was in Tel Aviv, when I was back home in India, and even now here at Harvard. But I think specifically what they're probably referring to is the language learning startup that I worked on in the first half of my gap year when we were all sort of in the pandemic. And it was a lot of fun, honestly. It was just a startup that I built together with other UWC alumni. And it was a way for us to connect tutors in a language to people that wanted to learn that language. And in most cases, both the tutors and the students were UWC people. And so it was just a great way to meet people from sort of different years of UWC, but then also different UWCs around the world. And so I did some business management for that startup. And I also developed like a program for teaching Hindi on that platform. And I taught a bunch of Hindi classes myself. And yeah, I think it was really fun. I think everyone should learn language if they can, especially now when it's so accessible to be able to learn a language. I think it really does a lot for your way of thinking and way of seeing the world. I'm a big believer in sociolinguistics, but we can talk about that some other time.
Manas, do you mean to say that you learned Armenian?
I attempted to learn Armenian, and by the end of it, I think I was able to have a fair bit of conversational fluency in Armenian.
Wow.
Sadly, it's been 2 years since that glorious moment in my life, and so I can't quite say the same anymore.
All right, thank you, Manas. I have a question for all three of you. What is one thing you wish you knew while you were a student at UWC Diligent, whether about university life or life after university, if that applies to you? Yeah, what's one thing you wish you knew before? Right. Anyone can go first.
For me, one thing I wish I knew is that when you're about to graduate from UWC, you kind of think you need to have it all figured out. Like you need to know what you want to do long term. You need to know where you want to be in 10 years time. You need to know the steps to get there. And that's just not the case. Like I think the more kind of the more wiggly your path is, often the dots kind of connect in retrospect. And it means that like the end point, like in 5 years time, like because you didn't know what you wanted to do and because you therefore explored so many different things, you actually 5 years down the line have such a rich experience as opposed to if you knew exactly what you wanted to do. So like the dots can connect in retrospect and you don't like just keep like changing your path. Like that's fine. And I wanted to do a small shout out to online courses. So for me, like using edX to explore disciplines was really helpful. Like I didn't think that I could do economics, and then I took a course in economics at edX. So it's free online courses from universities across the world. So I just want to do a shout out for that because we need that. It was really important after graduating.
Thank you. I think that's great. I mean, also a great plug for online courses. I 100% agree. All right. Who wants to go next? Manas?
I can go, yeah. So I don't know if the target audience for this webinar is sort of other UWC students, but if there was something that I could tell them, it's that like really use your time at UWC to get to know the people that are there with you. Like there's few other places where people are as sort of open and welcoming to your probing questions as they are at UWC. And yeah, just like enjoy the time that you have with the people that are there, because the people at UWC are there for like really fun and special reasons. And there's like a lot of cool life experiences to get, even if it's secondhand from their stories. But yeah, like sort of take your time to really get to know even the teachers and like the staff that's at your UWC. Because yeah, it's just like life experiences that people outside of a UWC setting aren't necessarily as willing to share with you. And yeah, there's just not a lot of environments and communities that are as open as UWC are. So yeah, take advantage of that. You know, you can study for the rest of your life. You have so much time to like do schoolwork, but you won't be in a place like UWC ever again.
Thank you. Then Edison.
Yeah, I was trying to be reflective of my time at UWC and understand what I wish I knew when I graduated. And I can totally second Victoria and Manas on everything they mentioned. And just UWC is our like fun bubble, in a way very idealistic. And I remember when I went to Earlham, firstly, one of my closest friends were also UWC people, which is really interesting that when there were like social events or something, somehow we gravitated towards each other. And it's I don't want to pump up UWC kids too much, but it is like something about the way we think or like view the world or the experiences we've shared. And it's yeah, I remember sometimes, and even at the Fletcher School even more, like conversations we have, even though this is more international relations setting, sometimes they're very practical and down to earth, and like, yeah, this is how you think, but this is how it's actually done. And so it's yeah, I wish I knew that the life is not as ideal as we want it to be. And in UWC we were really yeah, I remember like my thinking has changed so much and my outlook to life has changed so much. But I think the core and just like the core, like the moral aspect of my thinking when it comes to political science or international order, it really has been grounded in UWC. And the great opportunity to live with people from so many countries. You don't get to do that again in your life, most probably under the same roof. So I think it's yeah, just that the real world is here, and it's really important to carry your values with you as you graduate.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think we'll stop there. I don't think we have any other questions. But thank you so much to our panelists, Victoria, Manas, Edita. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing such great bits of wisdom and just sharing about your lives. So I wish you, the three of you, the absolute very best. We're so grateful that you guys will kind of return to UWC Diligent to share so much. Thank you to everyone who participated in the webinar today. View the webinar. I hope you found lots of this helpful as you contemplate your own journeys, whether you are a current student at UWC Diligent or you're an alumni as well. So thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day / evening / night, wherever you are.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Holly.
Thank you,
See you
Harvey.
all.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.